What makes a man not a man? When he is seen through the eyes of another man. A man whose thoughts and intentions have made him better? Through the eyes of hate, the eyes of envy, the eyes of greed, the eyes of self-righteousness, the eyes of pride. What makes a man not a man? Only another man. I was once a man, but no longer here. I was once king of my land, but no longer here. I was once a leader of nations, but no longer here. I was once a warrior, but no longer here. I was once a child who played and laughed, but no longer here. I was once my own master, but no longer here. I was once told I could be anything, but no longer here. I was once ruler of nations, but no longer here. I was once my father's son, but no longer here. No longer here, no longer here. I am no longer here.
Well, I'll tell you how I originally started the series. It actually came out of another series that I did years ago for my oldest son, and he was going off to college, and I had did a series called Screams of a Black Man for him. We lived in Chicago, and if you know about Chicago, it's got some racial things going on. And so one of the things that I used to always tell him was like, don't let your black speak before you do. Bad idea. That was not a good one. But I was also living during that time of fear, you know, not wanting my child to get caught up or getting a part of that. But the one thing about him is he was black, and he was very animate about who he was. And that's what I loved about him. He knew exactly who he was. And so his black spoke everywhere he went. He was not denying his culture or who he was. And I loved that about him. And so, like, he grew his hair out when he was a senior. He's like wearing afro, all the things that mom was like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do the stereotypical things. And his thought process was just what, you know, this is what I like, this is who I am. So this is what I'm going to do. And if people don't like it or can't get with it, then that's not on me. And I thought, you're right, that's not on you. I wanted to show that I got it. I got what he was saying. I got that it is rough out there. And basically what he was doing, he was literally screaming. And not just because of the injustice that was outside of the home, it was also the injustice that was inside the home. Because I wasn't getting who he was. And I was trying to cover who he was. And so I created that series. And it's a totally different series, but there was one particular piece that was in that series. And it's really big, and that's why it's probably not here. Because it's a really big piece. But what I did was, I did a lot of research. I started going and looking and going through the civil rights movement and all of that kind of stuff, and discovered a lot of people I didn't know because it was never taught to me. I never learned about it. And so I created this huge piece, and I decoupaged all of these images. And then out of decoupaging all of these images and doing reverse printing, I wrote a poem. A poem came. It was called Screams of a Black Man. And I wrote the entire poem on there, on the piece. And it was just absolutely amazing. But there was one piece, one portion of that entire piece, and it was Huey P. Newton. And now, at that time, I didn't know a lot about Huey P. Newton or the Black Panthers and things like that. I was born in the 60s. I wasn't necessarily raised in the 60s, so I didn't know all about, like, the flower child. Granted, I'm probably a bigger flower child than most because I was born in the 60s. It's like some kind of spirit gets on you. But, when I created it, the one thing that I did when I created the Huey P part was I just removed the eyes off of it. When I did the decoupage and I was doing the transfer, the only thing I removed so that you could see from him, because he had these intense eyes. And so I just removed the eyes, and I just wanted that part of him to show. And so for the next 3 years, it haunted me. And it's not like it's sitting in the house where I'm looking at it. I wasn't. I just remembered it. God would constantly bring me back to that one portion of this large race. And so finally, after 3 years, I'm like, okay, because I find that God gives me social conscious work, probably between 3 and 4 years. I'll get some social conscious work, and then I'm like, okay, social conscious work, what is it? What do you have me looking at? And then that's what I create. And so I'll start it, but just because he gives it to me in that year doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to complete it in that year, because what I find is there's tons of research that goes into social conscious work. It's not just, hit the pen to the paper. It's research, because you have to know what you're talking about, and you have to be able to express it when people ask you. When We Are Still Watching came, he also linked it with this great cloud of witnesses in the Bible. And I thought, oh wow, okay, this is definitely really interesting. And so taking that, and I began to do the research. Now mind you, it's not like it all came, it's like I tell people, sometimes I'm doing work and I have no idea where it's going, no idea where he's coming from with it. I'm just doing it because I'm like, okay, God. And it was all on these tiny little, and if you look at any of my work, it's big. So this was all on these tiny little pieces. And so I was like, okay, it's all on these tiny little pieces. And it was all just remove the paper, just remove over the eyes. And it was called We Are Still Watching. He had given me that. And then that's when the great cloud of witnesses came in. And I was like, wow, because originally when I did this, I was like, I would love to do this like above ceiling all the way around so that it actually looked like a great cloud of witnesses looking down at you. Because that's what these pieces were about, is they have gone before us. The ones that have gone before, that have pressed in, that have sacrificed, that have given their life, without even seeing the vision, without even seeing God, without even seeing Christ. But they still had the faith, and they still believed, and they still had the drive. A lot of these people, as a matter of fact, all of these people on this wall, they never saw the end result of what they were working for. But it didn't make it any less important. It didn't stop them. They still did the work because they were pressing toward the mark. Because they knew somewhere, somehow, it's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's going to happen. And they never gave up. Even until their death, they never gave up. And that's the whole thing about this. And now their whole vision is this, like, all right, we carried the torch and we passed it. And with all of the things that have been going on in the world today, 2020 is clarity. It brings clarity. It brought a lot of clarity to the world, a lot. So with this torch being passed, it's, what are you going to do with it? Where are you taking the torch? Where are you going to travel with it? How are you going to implement it? What are you going to add to it? So that you are part of this great cloud of witnesses. Even though you may never see, because a lot of us, we're Christians, and we're like, okay, we're in the end times, but that doesn't necessarily, we're going to make it to that whole calling up there. But will we stop just because we haven't seen it? It's the same thing that's happening in the world today. What are we fighting for? What are we giving our all to? When we look at these struggles, and it's not just black struggles, white struggles, Indian struggles, Hispanic struggles. It's everybody's struggle. Everybody has some form of struggle. Where are we putting our chips? How are we adding to and saying, you know what? I want to be the person that changes, even if it's just a little bit. Because a lot of times people are like, well, I can't do anything. What am I supposed to do? What are our children watching? What are we watching? What's shaping our mindset? What's shaping our opinions? What's shaping their mindset? What's shaping their opinions? Even in school, what's shaping them? Are they getting the truth? As parents, we're responsible for all of that. We're responsible for the shaping of our children. You know, it's like people are watching us. I always tell people, it's like, you never live for yourself. You don't. You don't live for yourself. You might walk around and be like, I don't have any kids, I'm chilling, I can do whatever I want to do. Somebody, somewhere is watching, patterning, and following you. Somebody, somewhere. So your life is not your own. It is a part of a collective. And a lot of times we don't realize that. And we just kind of do what we want to do, and then we got other people following us. And they're like, okay, well, you're cool, because I'm going to do that too. So that's the kind of thing we want to think about when we're walking around Earth, is you have this great cloud watching and saying, who's going to carry that torch? Who's going to fight the fight? Who's going to say, hey, that's not right? Who's going to stand up and say that? A lot of times in society, we're afraid. It's like, ooh, you don't say things to people because I'm not saying it's not a whole lot of crazy out there. Because it is, especially nowadays. So that's where this exhibit came out of. And this exhibit is actually made up of several pieces. And one of them is poems, and my sons over there are going to read a couple of them. Philip's going to come over and read one, and then Timothy's going to come over and read one.
All right. The great cloud of witnesses, those who have gone before and have paved the way, those whose voices will continue to be heard and never go away, voices that were silenced but for a moment only to rise to break down barriers. With every sacrifice, these are our ancestors, these are our leaders, these are our martyred, these are our examples of the truth, these are our cries into the darkness, these are the courageous ones, breaking chains, tearing down walls, pushing the boundary of truth and freedom. These are our lineages, our forerunners, and they are still watching.
You cannot erase a sacrifice made, a word spoken, a dream chased, a stance made, a journey traveled, a purpose unfolded, a belief followed, a life taken, a passion pursued, a truth revealed, a spirit freed, a story told, a vision seen, a mission fulfilled, innocence embraced, a philosophy learned, a voice heard. You cannot erase a past, a nation, a race, a people.
I wanted them to read those because, especially the you can't erase us. In our society, we try to erase the past because we don't want to reveal the bad things. And that's how we are with our life sometimes. It's like, ooh, I don't want people to know. It's like skeletons in the closet, keep them hidden. But as we know, as being, especially as Christians, God shines light on those things, which means that if God shines lights on those things, he doesn't want them hidden. We don't want things hidden. And I find that in our society, there's lots of things that we try to hide and keep hidden. And that's what this is about. One of the things that when my kids were in grade school, they wanted to get rid of the Tom Sawyer books because of Negro. Gone with the Wind, they want to stop. But some things are period pieces. Some things are meant to be because of history. And if you erase it, those who cannot remember their past are apt to repeat it. So if we don't remember the past and we decide to erase it, we decide to destroy it, then generations of children will never know what actually happened. And that's why it's important that we don't. It's important that we add to the story, but we don't erase the story. Because that's what happened. The young lady over here on the wall that was part of the women's suffrage movement, most people didn't even know she had ran for president. She was the first woman to ever run for president. But why no one knows? Because they erased it. Why? Because they didn't want any other woman going that route. So erase it. So we don't have to deal with this anymore. Let's shut her up. Let's break her down, kick her out. So now it's covered. So nobody knows. They just think today, ooh, everybody's powerful today. No, this woman was paving the way long ago. But people don't know that. Why? Because we allowed that. It's often said, history is told through the eyes of the victor. So they were victorious. So her history wasn't told. When I did this exhibit in Fort Collins, I did it outdoors. And I had tons of people coming to me. Because for years, I'm like, man, they robbed us of our history. We didn't learn any Black history in school. You know, we got the Black History Month. Did you guys get Black History Month? Yeah. Learned your Black history. What was that? Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, right? Okay? But that was it. And so, you know, Black people was like, man, they robbed us. We didn't get any history, so we did most of it when we went to college and learned the different things. And then we really got mad because we really didn't learn anything. You know, our inventors and all of this kind of, the scholars. And then I do this exhibit in downtown Fort Collins. And if you know anything about Colorado, there's not a whole lot of us out there. So that means I'm talking to a lot of young white kids. And they are telling me about the things that they didn't learn. One young guy, he was pretty much in tears. He says, I just learned about the Tulsa race riots, Black Wall Street. And that's when it dawned on me. We have all been robbed. We've all been robbed. Not just Blacks, not just white, Indian, Hispanic, everybody. We've been robbed of American history. They've taught their form of American history, but they didn't teach true American history. Now, can you teach everything all the time? No. But by omitting truth, because that was what was omitted. The Tulsa riots, oh, that definitely didn't want to get that out. You don't want people to know that. It's like they already know about slavery. Wish we could have hushed that up. But to let them know the things that were really done, even after slavery was over, can we cover some of that up? Is there a way to cover that up? And then you have people tearing up things after the riots. It's like, no, don't tear the monuments down. Because they tell you a story. They don't tell the whole story. And they don't tell the truth. They tell half-truths. So add the rest of the story to it so that we can know the whole story. So our kids will know. Because I believe that by telling the whole story, you can eliminate some of the racism. Now, can you just destroy it all? No, because people are people. But you can eliminate some of things by telling the truth. Because lies only breed more lies and cover and all that kind of stuff. Don't erase. Don't let them erase it. Don't let them erase those things from history and memory. I feel that the kids today have more information than a lot of us ever got growing up. And I'm grateful. I mean, I'm not big into the whole social media, internet, all that kind of stuff. Because they do sit there like that. But these kids have more information than we have ever gotten. And that's a good thing, but it's something that we also have to steer so that we know what they're intaking and what they're learning. Because just like there's truth on the internet, there's a lot of lies on the internet. And so as parents, when we go into these schools, we need to know what they're teaching. I remember my son brought a book home. It was a history book, and it kept saying, it said, the bad white people. And it was during the westward expansion. So it's like you go from one extreme to the other extreme. Now you're pouring out all of this white guilt. You know, and that's not healthy. That's not what needs to happen. You don't have to tear down one race or society to bring up another. And that's not what this exhibit is about. This exhibit is about bringing out the truth and waking people up and making people aware of, wow, I didn't know all of this. I wish I had have known a long time ago, and now I want to make sure that my kids know. That's what this exhibit is about. I want to know what else I haven't learned about. That's what this exhibit is about. Because as I go through the internet and as I talk to people, I learn more and more about how much I don't know. And I want to. So this exhibit, even though it seems like it's complete, isn't. There's so much more that's going to be added to it. So many more people. So many more doors. Because the doors are our example of man in humanity to man. Those doors signify our traveling, entering in. That's what they're about. So when you see doors, you go through them. You learn from them. But it doesn't mean that you stay on one side. You go onto another side. And what are you going to do on that other side? Once you've learned it, do you just close it and lock it? No. You open it and you leave it open because you want other people to see it. Not to say, oh man, that was awful, what they did to those people. You know? No. You leave it open because it's exposure. Expose it. So that people can say, hey, that was wrong. I don't want to see that happen again. How can we change it? Because it's still going on. The piece right here. If you shoot us, will we not die? That stayed in my mind. Now, I have never even seen The Merchant of Venice as a play. But there's one portion of The Merchant of Venice that I have read, and it has forever stayed in my mind. Hath not a Jew eyes? And I would it just would play over and over and over in my head. That portion of that play. And then when all of this started happening and being awakened in America, this came. This piece came. And I had to go and do more research on it. And then when I rewrote it, instead of putting, if you pierce us, will we not die? It was, if you shoot us, will we not die? Because that's what was a part of it. Because there was so much of that going on in the world. And so that particular piece, I compared it to the lynching because that's basically what it was, modern day. And that piece was very compelling for me, having to do the research for it. Because I didn't, to be able to look at those visions every day in order to bring that piece out. Like I said, when I create pieces, they're birthed. So it's not like it's over days, weeks, months, and then researching, and it's almost like getting to know these people. But that's a part of history. And that's a part of history you want people to know. This happened. Don't erase it. W.E.B. Du Bois, he wrote, "One is astonished in the study of history at the reoccurrence of the idea that evil must be forgotten, distorted, skimmed over. We must not remember that Daniel Webster got drunk, but only that he was a splendid constitutional lawyer. We must not forget that George Washington was a slave owner, and simply remember the things we regard as credible and inspiring. The difficulty, of course, with this philosophy is that history does lose its value. As an incentive and example, it paints perfect men and noble nations, but it does not tell the truth." Now, is some of history true? Yeah. But it's not all true. And so with knowing that, what are you going to do? Parents with children, what are you going to do? Because your kids are learning history. The great cloud of witnesses, they push forward without seeing the truth or the vision. So what are you going to do?